In his teens, Jean-Michel Masson loved comic books, and because of this passion, he wanted to pursue a career in graphics and animation. By 1982, he bought his first computer, the Auric 1, just to be able to start working with computer graphics. But he quickly realised he needed to be able to code, because the software was non-existent. He wrote a little program with a simple shape creation and filling function in BASIC. When this appeared to be quite slow, he switched to 6502 assembler to find more efficient algorithms to make it all work. He was fascinated by it and decided he wanted to become a programmer instead. He first worked as an ITer for the French computer magazine Hebdomadaire. It wasn't until the second half of the 1980s that Jean-Michel made his first games, the platformer Jungle Hero and the puzzler Brain Power, at the company's Softbook for the Thomson line of computers. By 1989, back at Titus, Hervé Caen was looking for a new hit release. A year prior, a new wave of programmers and graphics artists were hired. The likes of Philippe Pamart, a talented Z80 coder who would reinforce the team of Gil Espeche, Eric Zmiro, who focused more on PC conversions, graphics artist Florent Moreau, and of course Jean-Michel Masson. But the games that had followed the original Crazy Cars never matched the success of Titus's breakthrough flagship, so Hervé wanted to create a sequel. But by 1989, the 16-bit market had matured, and a new Crazy Cars game needed to be more than just a rehash of the first game with better graphics. Jean-Michel Masson, who had done some extraordinary assembler work on the game Titan, was put on the project as programmer, and Florent Moreau did the graphics. The duo came up with some innovative gameplay elements. In Crazy Cars 2, you travelled through 4 stages: Utah, Colorado, Arizona and New Mexico. And at the beginning of each stage, a map with a starting and end point was shown. During the gameplay, you were able to check this map. You had to make sure to follow the course to finish the stage, and this meant making the correct turns on various intersections, giving you a feeling of total freedom. But there were other features like cop cars that tried to pull you over for speeding, and even roadblocks to avoid, which sometimes meant taking a detour. At this time, this was a revelation, never seen before. Crazy Cars 2 was actually a Need for Speed hot pursuit avant la lettre. The assembler code of the first game by Alain Fernandes was optimised. The display routines were completely redesigned, giving the possibility to display images flipped vertically or horizontally to save precious system memory. All the car sprites in RAM were tilted in one direction only, but on screen they could be displayed facing left or right. Contrary to the first game, Crazy Cars 2 was completely made on the Atari ST and afterwards converted to the Amiga. The fantastic graphics, however, were created using Deluxe Paint on the Amiga in 32 colours and then downgraded to 16 colours for the ST. Florent did an amazing job, making the sequel the best looking racer at the time. The F40 was based on a model car. Photos of the model were made and scanned and afterwards retouched. Apart from the extra 16 colours, which was again apparent in the in-game gradients, and the better engine sounds and police car sirens, the Amiga version also featured day and night cycle, sorely missing on the ST. Jean-Michel remembers the time pressure in completing the game was murder. Some ideas were never implemented, and he wanted to refine the gameplay further, but never got the chance. Yet the game made it to shelves on time. A big release, it needed a great box. The painting by Gabruge was phenomenal. It had everything. The beautiful Ferrari F40 sliding through a junkyard straight into the sunset, surrounded by smashed up versions of the 4 cars from the first game. A beautiful tribute to the original artwork. For the American audience, the game was renamed to F40 Pursuit Simulator. When it was released, Crazy Cars 2 received mixed reviews. You either loved it or you hated it. The presentation was amazing, but a lot of people found the game very unforgiving, almost unplayable. The Atari ST and Amiga versions were more of a racing simulation and had to be controlled with the mouse, which seemed odd and put a lot of players off. The F40 also had a tendency of exploding when you hit a cop car, or when you crashed into a pole or a lamppost, or even when your time ran out. And there was no level code or save game option, which always meant restarting from the very beginning. This turned Crazy Cars 2 into a rather frustrating experience. The Amstrad conversion by newcomer Philippe Pamart, on the other hand, was absolutely excellent and a technical marvel on the system. The game had a totally different, more arcade feel to it compared to its 16-bit counterparts, and to this day it's considered one of the best racers for the system. A nice 42,000 copies were sold on the CPC alone. Here are some really weird facts. Before its release, Titus clearly used faked screenshots in some of the ads, displaying details next to the road that never made it into the final game, like cacti, trees and so on. Multiple police cars at once on screen, or cop cars on intersections, which never occurs in-game. Or even this really nice roadblock screenshot with the cop car and the F40 door-to-door, all totally made up. But even worse is the fact that every version of Crazy Cars 2 had a bug, which meant you're actually unable to finish the game. On the Amstrad, after completing the 14 stages, you're not treated with an ending screen, but with a buggy screen displaying an unknown next destination. This was fixed by a fan a few years ago. On the ST and Amiga, however, it's much worse. When you reach the end of level 6, the timer ending isn't triggered, and you can't do anything to continue. It's weird that this was never mentioned in any review. This is another testimony that things needed to go fast at Titus. Games were churned out at a high rate and quality control was sometimes lacking. Jean-Michel remembers he had to work for 36 hours straight, no sleep, just to finish the game on time. After that it went straight to production without really being tested. This just wasn't reasonable, and after Crazy Cars 2, Titus did form a separate test team. The pressure to finish games in such a way was the main reason for Jean-Michel's departure from Titus. However, he has no regrets, looks back on the time with nostalgia. According to Alain Fernandes, spending more than 3 months on a game was considered abnormal at the time. Alain even claims that by the time he left Titus after 5 years of service, he'd programmed games for over 20 different systems. Sadly, Crazy Cars 2 was not the high flyer the management team at Titus had hoped for, but at the beginning of the 90s, Titus entered a new era of high-quality games. In particular, a movie license and a new success story was about to be written.